do a couple of email lists and forums, and I had noticed over a period of time in talking about politics and stuff that most people were talking about things that were being passed on us, laws, and there was a small spattering of quotes from the political books of the past. I started thinking about the whole system of politics and how it could be broke down from beginning to end, from wanting politics to creating a political system to having politics affected on us. And I broke it down and I came up with these 4 tiers of politics. Tier 1, political philosophy. Tier 2, political structure. Tier 3, political etiquette. And Tier 4, political consequence. And just running down the list, the first tier is political philosophy. And there are quite a few books that were written before 1787, the Federal Convention that the founders had access to. And then there's been a lot of good work since 1787 that have added to what is proper politics. And just in working on this and sitting there thinking, I was sitting there thinking today, as I was listening to the comments being made, that most of the things on this political philosophy was written by men before ballpoint pens and pencils. It's not easy to write with a stylus on papyrus or dipping from an inkwell where you don't have an eraser to go back and cover up your mistakes. So they did a lot of good work, and they did it under hard conditions. The political structure, Tier 2, the U.S. Constitution is our structure that was built upon the Federal Convention, where the men who had prepared for decades to go in there and create a political structure that would support liberty and freedom. And as a side note, why hasn't the Constitution been copied? There's over 250 countries and dependencies in the world, but the freedom that the checks and balances that the Constitution has given us over 222 years, 223 years coming up, why hasn't it been copied by anyone else? It was one of, at least Thomas Jefferson's ideas, that it would spread like a wildfire. It would get rid of the kings and queens and monarchs, the idea of freedom and self-government, but it hasn't. Is it because of the inferences to slaves and Indians not taxed so that other countries self-righteously dismiss the whole document? It's just a question that's out there, a rhetorical question. Why hasn't it been copied? Because there are global forces out there like the Islamic Caliphate and the global proletariat that they're spreading like wildfire, but they ain't no good. Considering another facet of the Constitution, it is important to recognize a statement made at the Federal Convention of 1787. Tuesday, June 5th, 1787, Mr. Butler. We must follow the example of Solon, who gave the Athenians not the best government he could devise, but the best they would receive. Therefore, the framers recognized the mindset that they would not be able to do the best they could, but only the best that would be accepted by the people. Considering the novelty of self-government in 1787 in relation to a republic, they did very well, but it is the people who have to accept it. And that means they have to be capable of discerning political philosophy, prudent and practical political philosophy, to create a good political structure, which the U.S. Constitution is. Then moving to Tier 3, political etiquette, we have Robert's Rules of Order, Miss Manners, or Emily Post. I read an article in Reason magazine in the early 90s that did a pretty good job in relaying that the etiquette of a society is really the best government of all. You can tell what kind of government you're getting by the etiquette of the people around you. Another good one is Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior in Company and Conversation by George Washington. That's pretty neat. It gives a lot of good ideas how to comport yourself. It's also kind of neat because it's kind of dated to that time and frame. It tells you how to comport yourself around open hearth fires and what to do if there's a tick on the other guy's shirt. You're just supposed to kind of ignore it. It's kind of neat. Very important information. Congress has to account for political etiquette. In the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 5, Para 2, each House may determine the rules of its proceedings. They are mandated to decide what rules to conduct business and comport themselves. That kind of seems odd, you know. They can get in there and say, all right, we hereby decree we're going to act this way. Oh, sure. And I put the link on there for the rules and precedents of the House, where you can see the rules that they have to comport themselves by. And I looked at the index of that, and I saw a couple things that caught my eyes. I haven't read the whole thing. And one of them was number 28, statutory limit on public debt. It relates to the Congressional Budget Act of 1974. It has multiple references to disparate U.S. codes. It would be an interesting follow-up. Another note, did y'all know that there's a free law library in the basement of the courthouse up there? It has all the U.S. codes and the Vernon, Texas codes. You can go in there, it's a nice quiet library, and you can look up all the laws that they talked about down there. Back to the statutory limit on public debt. That was probably the last thing I would think I would find in the House rules, considering what they're doing. In that article, there is a paragraph that says, is amended by striking out the dollar limitation contained in such subsection and inserting in lieu thereof dollar blank blank blank, with the blank being filled with a dollar limitation equal to the appropriate level of the public debt set forth pursuant to Section 30 of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974. Relevant concurrent resolution described in Clause 1. And that, I mean, that means there's got to be somebody up there, if they're even following their own rules, who has to sit there, okay, the appropriate level of public debt is 1,000,000,000,000,000,000,000,000. And that's absurd. That's not etiquette. It just seems kind of odd to find that in there. The rules of the Senate is the next thing, and I put the link there where you can find the rules of the Senate. And considering the need for a presupposed universal etiquette to be politicked, appraise this quote. Monday, June the 25th, 1787 in convention. Mr. Pinckney. I believe this observation to be found generally true, that no two people are so exactly like in their situation or circumstance as to admit the exercise of the same government with equal benefit, that a system must be suited to the habits and genius of the people it is to govern and must grow out of it. That observation does not bode well for the philosophy of diversity or a polyglot approach to society, as it is the habits and genius of the people that will decide its etiquette. Standards which bring us together civilly should take precedence for growth. If we have bad or irreconcilable habits or genius, we will have bad etiquette, and the attrition which breaks down civility will be the consequence. And we have plenty examples of bad etiquette from our leaders and the attrition that's being affected upon us. Obama, they're too numerous to list.
Did anybody see
Yes.
Congressman Weiner and his behavior in the Congress? Not even 5 years ago, that would have been considered reprehensible. That would not have been accepted in the Congress of the United States.
Well, that's exactly why Congress has an 11% approval rating.
That's also why they have a TV, is where these people do stuff like this. Before that was televised, I assume they didn't do as many fit throwing. That's for
They
a big
treat
show.
each other with civility, and they don't feel like they have to do that anymore.
Well, it comes by the kind of society we have, Marshall.
Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
That represents the society it came out of.
John Conyers, espousing not reading the bills to be voted upon, when that is what they are there for. Here's an example of estimable etiquette from the Bible in reference to new kings and coming to authority. And it shall be, when he sitteth upon the throne of his kingdom, that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book out of that which is before the priest of the Levites. Deuteronomy 17:18. As a parallel, what politician do you know that has made a handwritten copy of the Constitution? That'd be something that would be, it would help us to recognize that they recognize the law and the law that they're going to be obeying.
I've never done that.
Tier number 4, political consequence. Now here's an esoteric thought. If our politicians accounted for the first 3 tiers, but then when in Congress passed nothing, then we would have good government and only suffer from omission of laws. Alas, that is not the case. When in Congress, our lawmakers have passed many things of which we will have to face the political consequences. And I don't like to sound like an alarmist, but the debt and the power to make us owe that debt, it makes serfdom more of a probability than being free men unless something happens. The Federal Register, the political consequence is the U.S. Code, U.S. Commercial Code, U.S. Federal Budget, and the U.S. Federal Register. I put the link for where you could sign up to the U.S. Federal Register. It's not easy to sign up. They make you sign up. They make you go to another page, and then they send you a confirmation email, make you log in to confirm, but it's worth it. We learned at the Making of America Constitutional Seminar put on last November at the Benning Keith Room how the Congress allows the very first line of the body of the Constitution to be circumnavigated by items being placed on a Federal Register unchallenged. This is called administrative law in contrast and contrary to Article 1, Section 1, Para 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. I signed up for the Federal Register in February, and the things they post on there are eye-opening. They have all their departments, and whatever they're doing, they make a post on there, and it comes in the email about 3 to 5 times a week. The President even posts what he's doing on there, and the things that he does is interesting. They foist upon us without any thought for the first 3 tiers. Those items are only 4th tier consequences. Those are the consequences that they give to us. That's not very smart to let that happen, and it's ruled by fiat. A couple paragraphs at the bottom, I'll let go by, and you can read on your own time if you want. Candidates who tell you about their position on Tier 1 through 3 will tell you more about how they will act while holding authority than candidates who focus on Tier 4, promise everything under the sun, and don't keep their promises. As a point of observation, the more a candidate tells you about what they're going to do on Tier 4, the more you can count them with the big government crowd. And with that in closing, I'd like to quote one of George Washington's favorite quotes from the play, Etiquette, A Tragedy. "'Tis not in mortals to command success, but we'll do more, Sempronius. We'll deserve it."
Thank you. Boy, we appreciate